I know exactly what you've been told your whole life. You've been told you're too sensitive, too emotional, too soft for this world. You've been told to toughen up, to stop taking things so personally, to calm down, to grow thicker skin. And maybe over time, you started believing them. You learned to apologize for your tears, to hide when something hurt too much, to shrink your reactions so others would feel more comfortable. But today, I want you to pause, because the diagnosis you were given was wrong. There is nothing broken in you, nothing weak, nothing accidental. You are not defective. You are what psychologists call a highly sensitive person. But I don't like that term, because it sounds fragile, and you are not fragile. You are a supersensor. While most people experience the world in standard definition, your brain records reality in ultra-high resolution. Every detail, every tone, every emotional undercurrent. Not because you choose to, but because that's how your system was built. And today, we're going to look at the neuroscience that proves something important. Your sensitivity is not a flaw. It's a high-performance radar system, one the world desperately needs. To understand yourself, we need to stop talking about personality and start talking about biology. Because this isn't about being dramatic or emotional. It's about hardware. Research shows that roughly 15 to 20% of people process information differently at a neurological level. Think of the human brain like a camera. Most brains are recording the world in something like 7, efficient, good enough to function without overload. But your brain is recording in 8K resolution. And that level of detail comes with both power and cost. Neuroscience has identified specific differences in how your brain operates. Differences that explain why life feels louder, deeper, heavier. The first upgrade is something scientists call low-latent inhibition. Most brains are designed to filter out the majority of sensory information. They ignore background noise. They dismiss subtle details. They conserve energy by deciding what doesn't matter. Your brain doesn't do that. Your brain lets almost everything in. The texture of the chair you're sitting on, the hum of electricity in the room, the slight shift in someone's mood before they even speak. Your system treats it all as relevant. This is why you get overwhelmed faster than others, why crowded spaces drain you, why chaos feels physically exhausting. But this same trait is also why you notice things no one else sees: patterns, connections, quiet beauty, subtle warnings. Your brain is not noisy, it's open. The second upgrade lies in your mirror neurons. These neurons allow humans to empathize by internally simulating the emotions of others. For most people, this system runs at a moderate level. For you, it's amplified. You don't just understand that someone is sad. You feel it. Their tension becomes your tension. Their anxiety echoes in your chest. Their joy lifts you without explanation. You are not imagining this. Brain imaging studies show that highly sensitive people activate emotional and sensory regions more intensely when observing others. You are literally experiencing the world through more channels. That's why harsh words cut deep, why injustice stays with you, why you absorb the emotional weather of a room the moment you enter it. You are an emotional sponge in a world full of spills. And then comes the most misunderstood part of your hardware: depth of processing. In conversations, you may pause before responding. In decisions, you may hesitate. You might even judge yourself for overthinking. But neuroscience tells a different story. You are not slow. You are thorough. While others react, your brain analyzes. While others skim the surface, your mind dives. Psychologists call this deep semantic processing. Your brain automatically links the present moment to past experiences, emotional meaning, and future consequences. You're not stuck. You're simulating outcomes. You're not confused. You're calculating impact. That pause you take before speaking, that's not weakness. That's high-level computation. And here's the part most people miss. If this trait was a flaw, if it truly made people unfit for life, evolution would have erased it. But it didn't. It preserved it. Because every human system needs balance. In ancient tribes, the bold and fearless were essential. They hunted, they fought, they took risks. But a tribe made only of warriors would not survive. They would rush into danger, ignore warning signs, miss subtle threats. The tribe needed someone else, someone who noticed the shift in the wind, the tension in a stranger's voice, the signs of a coming storm before it arrived. That was you. Not weak, not fragile, an early warning system. And even now, in a modern world that moves fast and speaks loud, your biology hasn't changed. The environment did. And that mismatch is why life can feel unbearable sometimes. But that doesn't mean you don't belong. It means the world wasn't designed with you in mind. And that is not the same thing as being wrong. Because when a system is powerful, it also reaches its limits faster. You don't burn out because you're weak. You burn out because you process more. Every sound, every emotion, every microsignal stacks in your nervous system, and eventually, your internal memory fills up. That moment when you suddenly need silence, when your body shuts down, when you feel the urge to disappear into a dark room, away from voices, screens, and expectations, including suffering, but also growth. Which means the question was never, what's wrong with me? The real question was, where am I trying to grow? Because if you spend your life forcing yourself to survive in an environment built for numbness, speed, and aggression, you will always feel behind. But when you curate your surroundings, your work, your relationships, your routines, something shifts. You don't just catch up, you surpass. This is why some of the most creative thinkers, healers, artists, strategists, and visionaries in history shared this trait. They weren't loud. They weren't aggressive. They weren't built for chaos. They were built for depth. But depth needs protection. And that brings us to the mistake most sensitive people make. You try to install a tougher filter. You tell yourself to stop caring, to numb out, to become harder. But you can't out-discipline biology. And more importantly, you shouldn't want to. The world already has enough numbness, enough disconnection, enough emotional blindness. What the world lacks is people who can still feel. But feeling without boundaries becomes suffering. So your task isn't to become less sensitive. Your task is to become selective. Selective with your energy, selective with your time, selective with who gets access to your nervous system. Boundaries aren't walls. They are climate control. They create the conditions where your system can operate at its best. Silence isn't weakness, it's maintenance. Solitude isn't avoidance, it's calibration. And once you understand this, something else begins to make sense. Your relationship with the digital world. You may have noticed that you don't post much. You watch more than you speak. You observe instead of performing. To the outside world, you might look distant, invisible, like a ghost. But psychology suggests that this silence isn't emptiness. It may be intelligence. Because when you process deeply, constant exposure to noise, opinions, conflict, comparison drains you faster than it drains others. So you pull back, not because you're afraid, but because your system knows when enough is enough. And that restraint, that ability to step away when others are addicted to stimulation, is not a flaw. It's a form of self-respect your nervous system learned before your mind could explain it. There is a quiet strength in people who don't constantly announce themselves. In a culture that rewards volume, speed, and visibility, silence is often misunderstood. People assume that if you're not posting, not arguing, not constantly reacting, something must be wrong, that you're insecure, disconnected, afraid of being seen. But psychology paints a more complex picture. Highly sensitive minds don't disengage because they lack confidence. They disengage because they see too much. Every post carries subtext. Every comment carries emotion. Every argument carries ripple effects. Where others scroll for stimulation, your brain registers meaning, and meaning is heavy. So instead of feeding the noise, you step back. You observe patterns. You sense emotional climates. You conserve energy. This isn't avoidance, it's regulation. Your nervous system knows that constant exposure without recovery leads to overload. And so it does something intelligent. It limits input. This same mechanism shows up in your private life. You may keep your inner world guarded. You don't open up easily. Not because you're closed off, but because once someone is inside, they matter. Surface-level interactions don't satisfy you. You're wired for depth, and depth requires trust. This is why betrayal cuts deeply for you, why emotional inconsistency unsettles you, why shallow connections feel exhausting rather than comforting. Your system doesn't skim relationships. It commits, which means when you care fully. That level of emotional investment is rare. And yes, it can be painful in the wrong hands, but in the right environment, it becomes transformational. This is where your greatest strength lives. Not in being louder, not in being tougher, but in being precise. You sense undercurrents before words are spoken. You notice shifts in energy before actions occur. You feel when something is off, even when logic can't explain it yet. Neuroscience calls this heightened interoception and emotional attunement. Most people override these signals. You don't. That's why your intuition is often right, even when you doubt it. And that doubt didn't come from within you, it was taught. Every time someone dismissed your feelings, every time you were told you were overreacting, every time your sensitivity was framed as a problem. Over time, you learned to second-guess your own radar, but that radar has been protecting you all along. It warned you about people before they hurt you. It sensed danger before logic caught up. It guided you toward meaning, even when the path Lu. The world teaches sensitive people to override their instincts. But healing begins when you start listening again. Not every emotion needs action, but every emotion carries information. Your job is not to silence the signal. It's to interpret it. And once you stop fighting your nature, something powerful happens. Your nervous system settles. Your clarity increases. Your energy returns. Because you are no longer wasting resources trying to be someone else. You stop asking, how do I become tougher? And you start asking, how do I live in alignment with how I'm built? That question changes everything. It changes how you choose work, how you choose relationships, how you structure your days. You realize you don't need constant stimulation to feel alive. You need meaning. You don't need to be everywhere. You need to be somewhere that fits. And when you find that place, that greenhouse, your sensitivity stops feeling like a burden. It becomes your edge. So here is what I want you to remember. You were never meant to harden. You were never meant to blunt your feelings or dull your awareness just to survive a world that moves too fast. Your nervous system isn't malfunctioning. It's finely tuned. And when a finely tuned instrument is played in the wrong environment, the problem isn't the instrument. It's the noise. You don't need to force yourself to endure chaos. You need to design a life that respects your limits. That means honoring your need for rest before exhaustion hits, choosing depth over constant connection, allowing silence to be part of your daily rhythm without guilt. It means building boundaries, not because you are fragile, but because you are valuable. A high-performance system requires maintenance. And once you stop apologizing for your sensitivity, something shifts inside you. You stop asking for permission to exist as you are. You begin to trust your internal signals again. You listen when your body says enough. You step away before burnout becomes damage. This is not withdrawal. This is wisdom. The world will continue to reward speed, dominance, and emotional numbness. But that doesn't make those qualities superior. It just makes them louder. In a time where people are increasingly disconnected from themselves and each other, your ability to feel deeply is not a liability. It's a form of intelligence. It's empathy that hasn't been numbed, perception that hasn't been dulled, humanity that hasn't been traded for efficiency. And yes, carrying this kind of awareness comes with weight, but it also comes with meaning. You see what others miss. You sense what others ignore. You feel what others suppress. That is not weakness. That is awareness. So the next time someone tells you that you are too sensitive, pause, breathe, and remember the truth they can't see. You are not defective. You begin to trust your internal signals again. You listen when your body says, enough. You step away before burnout becomes damage. This is not withdrawal. This is wisdom. The world will continue to reward speed, dominance, and emotional numbness, but that doesn't make those qualities superior. It just makes them louder. In a time where people are increasingly disconnected from themselves and each other, your ability to feel deeply is not a liability. It's a form of intelligence. It's empathy that hasn't been numbed, perception that hasn't been dulled, humanity that hasn't been traded for efficiency. And yes, carrying this kind of awareness comes with weight, but it also comes with meaning. You see what others miss. You sense what others ignore. You feel what others suppress. That is not weakness. That is awareness. So the next time someone tells you that you are too sensitive, pause, breathe, and remember the truth they can't see. You are not defective. You You are simply operating at a higher resolution, and the world doesn't need you to become less. It needs you to protect your gift. Because in a world that is increasingly numb, your ability to feel is not a burden. It is what makes you human. And if you've noticed that your sensitivity has quietly shaped the way you show up online, if you find yourself watching more than posting, observing more than performing, that silence may not be insecurity at all. It may be self-awareness. And if you want to understand whether your digital quiet is a sign of high confidence or hidden anxiety, there's a deeper conversation waiting. One that explains the psychology of the online ghost and why stepping back from the feed might be the healthiest choice a super sensor can make. I'll see you there.